This video's got to get attacked on all sides. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today we're going to talk about billionaires in space and the ethics thereof. As all of you know, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk all have space programs. In the case of the first two, they've both traveled into space now themselves, and it has been attacked and praised by all sides. Those on the left point out that Jeff Bezos makes the annual salary of his lowest paid workers every 11 seconds, and yet he's flying a giant phallic symbol into space at the cost of billions of dollars. Is this an appropriate way for the super rich to be spending their money when there are so many problems that they could be solving with their enormous wealth and talent? Those on the right are saying, look at these incredible human achievements, something we can all look up to and aspire to do ourselves, that they're really driving humanity forward, that space is the final frontier, and that we must become an intergalactic civilization. Both sides have interesting points, and my own view is highly selective based on the individuals involved. Of the three, Richard Branson is the most straightforward. He's created Virgin Galactic, and he wants to create a business, and that is absolutely fine. He wants to make space travel and space tourism a accessible means of entertainment and escapism for a larger number of people. So to get a seat on the Virgin Galactic at the moment, it's about $250,000 for a 1 hour flight, 3 minutes in space, where you're floating around in zero G. So that is, of course, only very rich people are able to afford that. But one can see that as the first step in what could be, in the coming decades, a truly democratized way of actually going into space and making those costs come right down so they become accessible for the middle classes. There is a possibility that in 20, 30, 40 years' time, in a lifespan of most of us who are watching this video, we may actually be able to afford ourselves to go into space thanks to the innovations of people like Richard Branson who are driving that industry forward. So no problems at all with that. I think that is just a very straightforward explanation. Jeff Bezos, hard for me to argue that this is anything other than a vanity product. He's got the money to do it. So why doesn't he do it? Is this unethical? Well, I mean, think about our own lives and what we burn money on, right? So I spend money on alcohol. I spend money on entertainment. Technically speaking, I could take that money and give it to people that are far less fortunate, and it would make a profound difference in their lives. So am I being unethical in doing that? I don't know. Is it hypocritical for me to complain when someone who has vastly more wealth than I do does essentially the same thing on a grander scale? Of course it's hypocritical. So it may be unethical, but it's also unethical. If it's unethical for them, it's unethical for me and for the viewers. So we really should be looking at our own lives. And this is one of the problems that I have with people on the modern left. There is one thing to say, look, things aren't fair. The skew of the income distribution is so sharp that it's really suboptimal, that what we want is to have people who are rewarded for their effort and their enterprise and their innovation, but not so skewed that their individual contribution is so out of whack with the actual wealth accumulation that they have that it suppresses the growth of the entire society. So one could say that there is a systemic problem with the income distribution where one person can afford to go into space while millions of others within his own country, let alone the rest of the world, hundreds of millions within his own country, are living on minimum wage. That's a fair systemic problem, but I don't think that's an individual problem, at least insofar as we all are faced with those choices. In the case of Elon Musk, it's something else. He firmly believes that the human race is going to die out unless we become a multiplanetary species. So he is seeking to invest money and resources to drive space travel forward so that we can colonize other heavenly bodies. What are the ethics of that? Well, in the context, this is where Elon is a bit of an enigma to me. I really like the guy. Of all the billionaires that are out there, I think he's the most interesting. He's the one that I would definitely want to have a beer with. And yet, I find his logic a little bit confected. Imagine, for example, he existed 100 years ago with the same view that says, okay, the world is going to die out unless we become an interplanetary species, and therefore I have to use my industry and resources in order to make us an interplanetary species. Well, obviously the technology 100 years ago was so far behind that was such a pointless ambition. And yet the time scale on which human race could die out is quite long. So if you think, okay, unless the human race is going to die out in the next 30 or 40 years, even today, the technology for interplanetary exploration and colonization is in its absolute infancy. We would be better off focusing on other major challenges that exist today that we can solve with resources that are currently within our stage of technological development, which someone like Elon Musk, with his brilliance, engineering mind and innovation, will be able to deal with. And I've given examples in previous videos. I think we should eradicate rabies in humans, for example. Elon would have the capacity to do that. And yet he's focusing on something that seems to me like a bit of a pipe dream that is out of step with our current stage of existing technology and that isn't necessary within the scope of our own lifespan. And thus, I don't think it's an ethical question in Elon's case. It more is a judgment question. I think if he's wanting to solve the major problems of our day, he should focus more on the problems that exist for us as we're living them right now here on planet Earth. And one could question the merits of investing in, space travel, as cool as that is. Okay, it is certainly a cool thing, but I suspect that he's enamored with the age of exploration and using ethics to justify that investment when I don't think the meritocratic case stacks up. Okay. Now, that said, I will be fair to Elon. His biggest fear for the human race is artificial intelligence. He believes that we will create a general artificial intelligence, that the timescale for that could be well and truly decades, not hundreds of years, and that perhaps if it is an existential threat to the human race, or you believe that, as Elon probably does, then the drive to get off planet Earth becomes more urgent because you think that there is an existential threat to the human race within the space of a time frame where that becomes relevant. Nevertheless, I think that is being extremely generous to that interpretation. These super wealthy individuals could make an enormous contribution to solving problems. And I don't mean taking their money away from them and giving them to government or, make them pay their fair share, which seems to be the decry of the progressives. I think what they should be encouraged to do is say, look, here are some major problems that we are facing in the world today. And you, with your money and industry, could make an enormous contribution by you yourselves leading the charge to solve those challenges. And we see examples of that. The Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation has vaccinated millions of people and eradicated malaria in parts of Africa. It's an extraordinary achievement. And that's where I think that these people could be committing not just their wealth, but their enormous intellects and capacity for enterprise and organization to solve these challenges. So I don't begrudge them traveling into space. It certainly is very cool. If I had the money, if I had the money, would I travel into space? Let's be real, I probably would, right? Like, it's such a cool thing. But I wouldn't be pretending it was a noble endeavor on behalf of all of humanity. I would be saying, look, I have the money and I just really want to do it. And it's an experience I couldn't have otherwise. And that's, where I think a certain degree of self-reflection and honesty from among these leaders would be warranted. That's my view. What do you think? Do you think that this is, a really powerful driving force? Are they picking up where the governments have left off? The private sector is willing to pay for things that used to be funded publicly by NASA and others. Isn't this a good thing? Shouldn't we be encouraging people to take up a greater share of the burden for space travel and exploration? Or is this just a massive vanity project? where they're hiding their self-interest and glory-seeking behind a veneer of ethics and respectability. Love to hear your thoughts on this subject, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.